Survivor, Chapter 27. It's in the car coming home from the airport. The agent shows me his cure for cancer. It's called Chemosolve. It's supposed to dissolve a tumor, he says, and opens his briefcase to take out a brown prescription bottle with dark capsules inside. This is jumping back a little ways to before I met the stair-climbing machine, to my first face-to-face with the agent the night he picks me up at the airport in New York, before he tells me I'm too fat to be famous yet, before I'm a product being launched. It's dark outside when a plane first lands in New York. Nothing's too spectacular. It's not, with the same moon as we have back home, and the agent's just a regular man standing where I got off the plane, wearing sunglasses with his brown hair parted on one side. We shake hands. A car drives up to the curb outside, and we get in the back. He pinches the crease in each trouser leg to lift it so as he steps into the car. And how he looks is custom tailored. How he looks is eternal and durable. Just meeting him, there's that guilt I feel whenever I buy something impossible to recycle. This other cancer cure we have is called Oncologic, he says, and hands another brown bottle across to me, sitting next to him in the back seat. This is a nice car, the way it's black leather and padded all over inside. The ride is smoother than on the airplane. It's more dark capsules inside the second bottle, and pasted around the bottle is a pharmacy label the way you always see. The agent takes out another bottle. This is one of our cures for AIDS, he says. This is our most popular one. He takes out bottle after bottle. Here we have our leading cure for antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis. Here's liver cirrhosis. Here's Alzheimer's, multiple neuritis, multiple myeloma, multiple sclerosis, the rhinovirus, he says, shaking each one of the pills inside so that the pills rattle, and handing them over to me. Viral it says on one bottle. Malignon, another bottle says. Cerebral save. Color cane, nonsense words. These are all the same size, brown plastic bottles with white child guard caps and prescription labels from the same pharmacy. The agent comes packaged in a medium weight gray wool suit and is equipped with only his briefcase. He features two brown eyes behind glasses, a mouth, clean fingernails. Nothing is remarkable about him except what he's telling me. Just name a disease, he says, and we have a cure ready for it. He lifts two more handfuls of brown bottles from his briefcase and shakes them. I brought all these to prove a point. Every second, the car we're in slides deeper and deeper through the dark into New York City. Around us, other cars keep pace. The moon keeps pace. I say how I'm surprised all these diseases still exist in the world. It's a shame, the agent says, how medical technology is still lagging behind the marketing side of things. I mean, we've had all the sales support in place for years, the coffee mug giveaways to physicians, the feel-good magazine ads, the total product launch, but it's the same old violin in the background. R&D is still years behind. The lab monkeys are still dropping like flies. His two perfect rows of teeth look set in his mouth by a jeweler. The pills for AIDS look just like the pills for cancer, look just like the pills for diabetes. I asked, so these things really aren't invented? Let's not use that word, invented, the agent says. It makes everything sound so contrived. But they aren't real? Of course they're real, he says, and plucks the first two bottles out of my hands. They're copyrighted. We have an inventory of almost 15,000 copyrighted names for products that are still in development, he says, and that includes you. He says, that's just my point. He's developing a cure for cancer? We're a total concept marketing / public relations organization, he says. Our job is to create the concept. Your patent is a drug. You patent a drug. You copyright the name. As soon as someone else develops the product, they come to us. Sometimes by choice, sometimes not. I ask him, why sometimes not? The way this works is we copyright every conceivable combination of words, Greek words, Latin words, English, what have you. We get the legal rights to every conceivable word a pharmaceutical company might use to name a new product. For diabetes alone, we have an inventory of 140 names, he says. He hands me stapled together pages from out of his briefcase in his lap. Glucocure, I read. Insulinase, Pancreid, Hamazine, Glucodan, Grodinase. I turn to the next page and bottles slip out of my lap and roll onto the car floor with the pills inside rattling. If the drug company that ever cures diabetes wants to use any combinations of words even vaguely related to the condition, they'll have to lease that right from us. So the pills I have here, I say, these are sugar pills. I twist one bottle open and shake a tablet, dark red and shining, into my palm. I lick it, and it's candy-coated chocolate. Others are gelatin capsules with powdered sugar inside. Mock-ups, he says, prototypes. He says, my point is that every bit of your career with us is already in place, and we've been prophesizing your arrival for more than 15 years. He says, I'm telling you this so you can relax. But the Creedish Church District disaster was only 10 years ago, and I put a pill, an orange geromazone, in my mouth. We've been tracking you, he says. As soon as the Creedish survival numbers dipped below 100, we started the campaign rolling. The whole media countdown over the last 6 months, that was our doing. It needed some fine-tuning. It wasn't anything specific at first. All the copy is petty as pretty much search and replace, fill in the blank, universal change stuff, but it's all in the can. All we needed was a warm body and the survivor's name. That's where you enter the picture. From another bottle, I shake out 24 Inazans and hold them under my tongue until the black candy shells dissolve. Chocolate melts out. The agent takes out more sheets of printed paper and hands them to me. Ford Merit, I read. Mercury Rapture. Dodge Vignette. He says, we have names copyrighted for cars that haven't been designed. Software that's never been written. Miracle dream cures for epidemics still on the horizon. Every product we cannot anticipate. My back teeth crunch a sweet overdose of Budonadons. The agent eyes me sitting there in size. Enough with the empty calories already, he says. Our first big job is to modify you so you'll fit the campaign. He asks, is that your real hair color? I pour a million milligrams of Jodazones in my mouth. Not to mince words, the agent says, but you're about 30 pounds heavier than we need you to be. The bogus pills I can understand. What I don't understand is how we could begin planning a campaign around something before it happened. No way could he have a campaign plan before the deliverance. The agent takes off his glasses and folds them. He sets them inside his briefcase and takes back the printed list of future miracle products, drugs, and cars, and he puts the list in his briefcase. He tug-of-wars the pill bottles out of my hands, all of them silent and empty. The truth is, he says, nothing new ever happens, he says. We've seen it all, he says. Listen, in 1653, he says, the Russian Orthodox Church changed a few old rituals. Just some changes in the liturgy. Just words, language. In Russian, for God's sake. Some bishop Nikon introduced the changes as well as the Western manners that were becoming popular in Russian court life at the time, and the bishop started excommunicating anyone who rebelled against these changes. Reaching around in the dark by my feet, he picks up the other pill bottles. According to the agent, the monks who didn't want to change the way they worshiped fled to remote monasteries. The Russian authorities hunted and persecuted them. By 1665, small groups of monks began burning themselves to death. These group suicides in northern Europe and western Siberia continued through the 1670s. In 1687, some 2,700 monks captured a monastery, locked themselves inside, and burned it. In 1688, another 1,500 old believers burned themselves alive in their locked monastery. By the end of the 17th century, an estimated 20,000 monks had killed themselves instead of submitting to the government. He snaps his briefcase, shuts, and leans forward. These Russian monks kept killing themselves until 1897, he said. Sound familiar? You have Samson in the Old Testament, the agent says. You have the Jewish soldiers who killed themselves in the Masada. You have seppuku among the Japanese, Sadi among the Hindu, and Dura among the Cathari during the 12th century in southern France. He ticked off group after group on his fingertips. They were the Stoics. They were the Epicureans. There were tribes of Guana and Indians who killed themselves so they could be reborn as white men. Closer to here and now, the People's Temple mass suicide of 1978 left 912 dead. The Branch Davidian disaster of 1993 left 76 dead. The Order of the Solar Temple mass suicide and murder in 1994 killed 53 people. The Heaven's Gate suicide in 1997 killed 39. The Creed's Church thing was just a blip in the culture. He says it was just one more predictable mass suicide in a world filled with splinter groups that limp along until they're confronted. Maybe their leader is about to die, as the case was with the Heaven's Gate group, or they're challenged by the government, like what happened around the Russian monks at the People's Temple or the Creed's Church district. He says, actually, it's awfully boring stuff, anticipating the future based on the past. We might as well be an insurance company. Nevertheless, it's our job to make cult suicide look fresh and exciting every time around. After knowing fertility, I wonder if I'm the last person in the world who ever gets caught by surprise. Fertility with her dreams of disaster, and this guy with his clean shave and his closed loop of his history. They're two peas trapped in the same boring pot. Reality means you live until you die, the agent says. The real truth is nobody wants reality. The agent closes his eyes and presses his open palm to his forehead. The truth is the Creed's Church was nothing special, he says. It was founded by a splinter group of Millerites in 1860 during the Great Awakening, during a period when in California alone, splinter religions founded more than 50 utopian communities. He opens one eye and points a finger at me. You have something, a pet, a bird, or a fish. I ask how he knows this about my fish. It's not necessarily true, but it's probable, he says. The Creedish granted labor missionaries what was known as mascot privilege, the right to own a pet in 1939. It was the year a Creedish biddy stole an infant from the family where she worked. Having a pet was supposed to sublimate your need to nurture a dependent. A biddy stole somebody's baby. In Birmingham, Alabama, he says, of course, she killed herself the minute she was found. I asked what else does he know. You have a problem with masturbation. That's easy, I say. He read that in my survivor retention record. No, he says. Lucky for us, all the client records for your caseworker are missing. Anything we say about you will be uncontested, and before I forget, we took 6 years off your life. If anyone asks, you're 27. So how does he know so much about about me? Your masturbation? My crimes of '09. It seems that all your labor missionaries had a problem with masturbation. If you only knew. Somewhere in my lost case history folder are the records of being an exhibitionist, a bipolar syndrome, a misphobic, a shoplifter, etc. Somewhere in the night behind us, the caseworker is taking my secrets to her grave. Somewhere, half the world behind me is my brother. Since he's such an expert, I asked the agent if there are even ever murders of people who were supposed to kill themselves but just didn't. In these other religions, did anyone ever go around killing the survivors? With the People's Temple, there was an unexplained handful of survivors murdered, he says. In the order of the Solar Temple, it was the Canadian government's trouble with the Solar Temple that prompted our government's survivor retention program. With the Solar Temple, little groups of French and Canadian followers kept them killing themselves and killing each other for years after the original disaster. They called the killings departures. He says members of the Temple Solar burned themselves alive with gasoline and propane explosions they thought would blast them to eternal life on the star Sirius. And he points into the night sky. Compared to that, the Creedish mess was infinitely tame. I asked, has he anticipated anything about a surviving church member hunting down and killing any leftover Creedish? A surviving church member other than you, the agent asked? Yes. Killing people, you say? Yes. Looking out the car at the New York lights going by, the agent says, a killer Creedish? Oh, heavens, I hope not. Looking out at the same lights behind tinted glass at the star Sirius, looking past my own reflection with chocolate smeared around my mouth, I say, yeah, me too. Our whole campaign is based on the fact that you're the last survivor, he says. If there's another Creedish alive in the world, you're wasting your time. The entire campaign is down the tubes. If you're not the only living Creedish in the world, you're worthless to us. He opens his briefcase a crack and takes out a brown bottle. Here, he says, take a couple Serenadones. These are the best anti-anxiety treatment ever invented. They just don't exist yet. Just pretend, he says, for the placebo effect. And he shakes two into my hand. Stay tuned for next chapter.